Careful and primitive work in stone adorns the graceful facade and tells a story in 3 levels. The bottom level holds the statues of St. John the Evangelist and the Sacred Heart. The middle level contains life-size statues of the parents of the Virgin Mary, St. Joachim and St. Anne, with the Virgin Mary in the middle, bounded by wooden doors. At the top is a concave abocinada entrance in the shape of a conch shell, one of only 6 churches in Mexico with this design. Originally, there was an eye set in the middle of the conch shell, taken variously as a sign of omniscience or of God's healing power. The church features a dome covered with yellow and blue tiles and an unfinished bell tower that houses the oldest bell in the city. The pink facade of the renovated Oratorio de San Felipe Neri is a slight departure from the Churrigueresco style of La Nuestra Senora de Salud and is often described as the second stage of Mexican Baroque architecture. The facade is divided vertically by pairs of columns. Between each pair of pillars is a niche with the statue of the 5 religious figures that grace the facade: San Jose, San Felipe, San Pedro, and San Pablo. At the very top, surrounded by double columns, is the Virgin Mary. There is also a horizontal nature to the facade as it's divided into 3 levels. The first level contains the carved entry doors and the saints associated with the region and the oratorio tradition. The second level has a more ecclesiastical tone with a focus on the leaders of the Catholic Church, while the third level reaches the sacred in the form of the Blessed Virgin. There is some controversy surrounding the feathers that enclose the Virgin within the shell-shaped enclosure. Some see the feathers as an extension of the indigenous themes found on the eastern Ecce Homo entrance, while others see them as the feathers of angels surrounding the Virgin. Also visible here is the bell tower, as well as the dome over the nave of the oratorio. The Oratorio de San Felipe Neri is fronted by a courtyard that overlooks the Plaza Zaragoza. The main facade of the Templo de San Francisco is a study in the evolution of architectural taste. The main facade is Churrigueresco, the Baroque style found on many churches from the 18th century. The facade has 6 terracotta columns, estapites, adorned with a Baroque profusion of cherubs, vines, and religious iconography. St. Francis of Assisi stands at the very top of the facade. Below there are depictions of the crucifixion and sculptures of St. John and Our Lady of Sorrows. By the time the bell tower was erected, taste had shifted from the extravagant to the refined, resulting in the neoclassical style, which was added in 1799 by architect Francisco Eduardo Tresqueras, brought in from nearby Celaya to, quote, save the church. The top of the tower features carvings of 8 saints, one of whom was eradicated by lightning in what one hopes was not in fact an act of God. Also visible is the dome over the nave, as well as the park that fronts the Templo de San Francisco. This aerial tour begins at the seldom used entrance on San Francisco. The doorway is adorned with the figure of St. Francis, surrounded by symbols of the faith. Once above the roof level, the nearby convent of San Antonio is directly behind the church and abuts the Templo de San Francisco. As the view shifts to the east, the plaza of the Templo San Francisco comes into view, and it is from this east side that entrance is gained to the church. A quick look down shows the narrow eastern entrance area. Also visible is the white bell tower and the solitary flying buttress supporting the southern wall. Austere, the Church of the Third Order stands in stark contrast to the opulence of the Templo de San Francisco. This aerial view begins with a still shot of the current entrance to the church, which is midway on the southern side. Las Monjas has a uniform yellow finish over the stone masonry. Coming into view now are the bell tower and the dome, both created a century and a half later by Seferino Gutierrez, who was also responsible for the facade. This view of the church complex shows the location at the corner of Canal and Hernandez Macias, just south of the Angela Peralta Theater. Also visible here is the former convent of the Immaculate Conception, which is now the Bellas Artes Cultural Center. As the video ascends, one can see the rough stone construction on the eastern end, which houses the private chapel of the cloistered nuns who still reside there. The pink facade of the church dates from the late 1800s and was built over the structure created by Soberarius a century earlier. The facade design is by Zeferino Gutierrez, a self-taught architect and builder who apparently received his inspirations from postcards of European cathedrals. Although this church is not a cathedral, as it does not serve as a seat of an ecclesiastical government, the pink volcanic stone facade on this much earlier Baroque church lends it an air of religious authority. Although described as neo-Gothic, drawing upon the architect's influences, it also retains an indigenous air in terms of the motifs on its sides, as well as the openness of its towers, which allows the wind to pass through from all four cardinal directions. From the vantage point of its steeple, all of the churches included in this tour are visible. In a counterclockwise fashion are the Temple of the Third Order and the Temple of San Francisco. In the distance is the Nuestra Señora de la Salud, as well as the Oratorio de San Felipe Neri, and finally the yellow exterior of Las Monjas can be seen, as well as surrounding environs of San Miguel de Allende. Midway up the facade are the bell towers. There are 8 bells in the tower, and all of them have names. The largest, called La Luz, seen here at the far right, was cast in 732 from the precious metals donated by wealthy citizens. It rings out every evening. Although many critics find this facade Disney-esque and incongruous with the surrounding Jardin, it is much beloved by the citizens and visitors alike. The exterior of San Rafael marries the pink facade of the original church with the more subdued Moorish influence of the bell tower, which was added later. From above, the narrow footprint of the church is apparent. The tower was designed by Zeferino Gutierrez, who feared the original design would clash with the new Parroquia facade. The clock was donated by the citizens of Madrid and is now located in the Chorro. It chimes on the quarter hour.